welcome back to Insights from the Unsighted by Rosebud. We are on a roll now. Um, I am still trying to maintain almost my pace of one per week, but I know that I'm forgiven if I don't. But thanks so much for hanging with me and ready to start in on the next question. The question for this program is: have you ever felt invisible? As I like to do, let's pause a bit so you can think about, what is she talking about this time? Have there been times in your life when you felt that your presence in a setting, in a room, wherever, was insignificant? That if you had not been there, it would have been okay. Have you ever felt in situations where everybody seems to be conversing with each other and you just don't have much to say? Or people don't think you have much to say, so they overlook you. They're polite, cordial, don't get me wrong. But once they've said hi and oh, you look nice or whatever, they're pretty much done. Have you been in situations like that? Maybe it was a work situation. I've talked with a few people prior to doing this taping, as I generally do when I'm doing research of any sort. And a couple of female friends of mine who have been principals or executive directors or something like that. And perhaps they were the only woman in a room of male executives or male principals. And although everybody was very nice, they just didn't feel like they were included in the situation. They felt invisible. Of course, it could be the reverse as well, where it's the only male in a situation with many females, although that rarely happens. I don't know, just take your pick. Sometimes it could be because of religious affiliation. You're the only non-Catholic in a whole room of Catholics. Who knows? You're the only African American in a room of Caucasians, although that tends to happen more often than the opposite. But again, the question: have you ever felt invisible? And if so, what other feelings did it cause? Sadness? Loneliness? What did you do to try and remedy that? Or did you just live through it? Or did you realize perhaps somebody else was feeling invisible and you did something to make that person feel better? So there are many ways you can think about this particular question. Now, where does it come from? To be honest, this is a very personal question for me. I'm sure that in my adult life, there have been small times when I felt somewhat invisible. But not until I lost my sight have I really felt as though people are not paying any attention to me. And I don't mean that to say I've got to be always on, that somebody's got to be talking to me. Not at all. I mean that since sight loss, very often people will talk over me or to someone next to me instead of talking directly to me. Couple of situations. I love going to restaurants. My friends and I like having late lunches. It's part of the little perks of being retired. And although I've done that for most of my adult life, it's not until sight loss that I noticed when I would go into a restaurant, if my cane was out, I would be treated differently than if they could not tell I was unsighted. When the cane was out, suddenly they wouldn't ask me if this seat is okay. They'd ask my friend, does she want to sit here? Do you think she'd mind sitting there? They use the pronoun she, and I'm standing right there instead of asking me, do you want to be in a booth or do you want a chair? They don't ask me. They ask the person with me. Once we are seated, very often the waiter will come up and say, hello, how are you? And we're all fine and happy and all that. Suddenly, I'm no longer talked to. They will ask the person I'm with, would you like to have water? And he or she will say, yeah, I'd like that. And then they'd say, do you think she'd like some water? Now, I know some of you are sitting there going, no, they do not do that, Rosebud. I promise you, you have to live it or be around somebody who lives it to see it. Because until my friends started really noticing what I had said, it just went over their heads as well. And most recently, I was going to the voting polls, and it happened again. They would ask the person I'm with, will you be signing her name for her? I mean, I'm chuckling, and I do try to laugh it off. And then other times I'll say, excuse me, here I am, ask me. And so in 12 and a half years, I've had so many instances of this until it really does get to be aggravating. And it's like, why? Do you think it's okay to ignore me? Do you think that the fact that I don't see means I can't hear? That I can't think for myself? I have never really understood it. I've had friends to say the same thing happens to their parents, their mother or their father, if they go into the doctor's office with them. Now, personally, I wouldn't let somebody go into the doctor's examination room with me, but sometimes that happens. And the doctor will sit there with the patient, the older person there, and then the daughter standing right there, and they will ask the daughter, is she taking her medicine? Once again, wrong pronoun, talking to the wrong person. So I really wanted to bring this to everybody's conscious level. Because like I said, I'm sure if you're the one doing it, you're not doing it intentionally. But please be mindful of it. Please. And if it is happening to you, speak up for yourself. It might embarrass the person you're with for a second, but that person's embarrassment is not as important as your sense of being your own individual. This was so important to me that I even wrote it into a poem. You'll find out as we do other programs, that's one of the things that I do, is write poetry. I have thousands of them. This particular poem I will read as the closing for this program. And the poem is called Invisibility. And I wrote it 2 years into sight loss, which means about 10 years ago. Invisibility. I didn't think that I would have to fight not being seen when I lost my sight. But sadly, I discovered when I was out how often folks would speak over me as I would be talked about. Put her over here, said the hostess when I entered the room. No, I corrected. I won't be put as though I am a plant or a broom. Would she like some water? The server then asked my friend, rather than asking me like any other customer needed to be 10. Did I somehow disappear? I asked with pretend jest. I know I can't see you, but surely your eyes are at their best. My loss of sight has no impact on my ears or on my mind. Yet I'm ignored and overlooked as though you're the one who's blind. It pains me deeply to be viewed as just an old, blind woman with a cane. When with sight I was seen as smart, wise, and even a good looking dame. I'm sure no one means any harm and has no ill intention, but my feelings must be considered and mentioned. No, I didn't know that I would have to fight not being seen when I lost my sight, since it seems to be an eternal curse of my condition. I will stand my ground and demand respectful attention. Until next time, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and truly take this theme to heart. This is Rosebud.